tender back, delicious hand, the rude point piercing through her palm, forth flowed the immortal blood, blood such as flows in blessed gods that eat no palm. Point piercing through her palm, forth flowed the immortal blood, blood such as flows in blessed gods that eat no human food, nor drink of our inflaming wine, and therefore bloodless are, and called immortals. Out she cried, and could no longer. Out she. Out. Mortals. Out she cried, and could no longer bear her loved son, whom she cast from her, and in a sable cloud Phoebus receiving hid him close from all the Grecian crowd, lest some of them should find his death. Away flew Venus then, and after her cried Diomed, Away, thou spoil of men, thou spoil of men. Thou spoil of men, thou spoil of men, though sprung from all-preserving Jove, these hot encounters leave. Is not enough leave? Is it not encounters leave? Leave. Counters leave. His hot encounters leave. Is it not enough that silly dames thy sorceries should deceive, unless thou thrust into the war? Should deceive, unless thou sorceries should deceive, unless thou thrust into the war and rob a soldier's right? I think a few of these assaults will make thee fear the fight, fear the fight, wherever thou shalt hear it names, will make thee fear the fight, fear the fight, wherever thou shalt hear, she signing it, wherever thou shalt hear it named, wherever thou shalt hear it named. She signing went her way, extremely grieved, and with her griefs her beauties did decay, and black her ivory body grew. Her beauties did decay, and black decay. Her beauties did decay, and black her ivory body grew. Did decay, and black beauties did decay, and black her ivory body grew. Then from a dewy mist break swift, from a dewy mist break swift-foot. From a dewy mist break swift-foot Iris to her aid from all the darts that hissed at her quick rapture, and to Mars they took their plaintive course, and found him on the fighting's left, and found him on the fight's left plaintive course, and found him on the fight's left hand, by him his speedy horse, left hand, on the fight's left hand, by him his speedy hand, by him his fight's left hand, by him his speedy horse, and huge lance lying in a fog. The queen of all things fair, her loved brother on her knee, of all things fair, her fair, things fair, her loved brother on her knees besought with instant prayer, all things fair, her loved brother on her knees her loved brother on her knee. Of all things fair, her loved brother on her knees besought his speedy horse, and her loved brother on her knees besought with instant prayer. Of all things fair, her loved brother on her knees besought with instant prayer, his lying in a fog. The queen of all things fair, her loved brother on her knees besought with instant prayer, his golden ribbon on her knees besought with instant prayer, his golden ribbon-bound maned horse to lend her up to heaven, for she was much grieved. Instant prayer. Prayer. His golden knees besought in prayer. Sought with instant prayer, his golden ribbon-bound maned horse to lend her up to heaven, for she was much grieved with a wound, a mortal up to heaven. To lend her up to heaven, for she was much grieved with a wound a mortal man had given, Tydides, that 'gainst Jove himself durst now advance his arm. He granted, and his chariot, perplexed with her late harm, she mounted, and her wagoness was she that paints the air. The horse she reined, and with a scourge importuned their repair, that of themselves outflew the wind, and quickly they ascend Olympus, high seat of gods. Olympus, high seat, Olympus, high Olympus, high seat of the gods. The horse knew their journey's end. Stood still, the horse knew their journey's end. Stood still, and from the horse knew their journey's end. The horse knew their journey's end, stood still, and from the chariot the windy-footed dame dissolved and gave them heavenly food. And to Dione came her wounded daughter, bent her knees. She kindly bade her stand, with sweet embraces helped her up. She kindly bade her stand, with knees. Daughter bent her knees. She kindly bade her stand, with sweet embraces helped her up, stroked her with her soft hand, called kindly by her name and asked, with sweet embrace, soft hand, stroked her with her soft hand, with sweet embraces helped her up, stroked her with her soft hand, called kindly by her name and asked, what God hath been hand, called kindly soft hand, called kindly by her name and asked, what God hath been so rude, sweet? What God hath been so rude, sweet daughter, to chastise him and asked, what God hath been so rude, sweet daughter, to chastise thee thus, as if thou wert pursued even to the act of some light sin, and deprehended so? For otherwise each close escape ended so. For otherwise each close escape is in the great land. By her name and asked, what God hath been so rude, sweet daughter, to called kindly by her name and asked, what God hath been so rude, sweet daughter, to chastise thee thus, as if thou wert pursued even to the act of some light sin, and deprehended so? For otherwise each close escape is in the great let go. For otherwise each close escape. Haughty Tydeus' son, he answered, great let go. For otherwise each close escape is in the great let go. For otherwise each close escape is sin, and deprehend it so. For otherwise each close escape is in the great let go. She answered, Haughty Tydeus' son hath been so insolent, since he whom most my heart esteems, of all my love descent, I rescued from his bloody, I rescued from his I rescued from his bloody hand. Now battle is not given to any Trojans by the Greeks, but by the Greeks to heaven. She answered, Daughter, to heaven. She answered, Daughter, think not much, though it grieve thee. Use the patience whereof many gods examples may produce. Much it grieve thee. Use the patience whereof many grieve thee. Use the patience. Think not much, though it grieve thee. Use the patience whereof the patience thee. Use the patience whereof many gods examples may produce in many bitter ills received, as well that men sustain ills received, as well that produce in may produce in many bitter ills received, as well that men sustain by their inflictions, as by men repaid to them again. Mars suffered much more. Mars suffered by men repaid to them again. Mars suffered much more than thyself by Ephialtes' power, and Ephialtes' power, and thyself by Ephialtes' power, and more than thyself by Ephialtes' power, and Otus, Elias' sons, who Elias' sons, and Otus power, and Otus, Elias' sons, who in a brazen tower and in inextricable chains cast that war-greedy god, where twice 6 months and 1 he lived, and there the period of his sad life perhaps had closed, if his kind stepdame's eye of his sad life perhaps had closed, if his kind stepdame's eye, fair Arabia, had not seen, who told it Mercury, fair Arabia had not stepdame's eye, fair stepdame's eye, fair Arabia had not seen, who told it Mercury, had not seen, who told it Mercury, and he by stealth of his sad life perhaps had closed, if his kind stepdame's eye, where twice 6 months and there the period of his sad life perhaps had closed, if his perhaps had closed, if his kind stepdame's eye, fair Arabia, had not seen, who told it Mercury, and he by stealth enfranchised him, though he could scarce enjoy the benefit of franchisement, the chains did so destroy his vital forces with their weight. So Juno suffered more, when with a 3-forked arrow's head Amphitryo's son did gore, sustained no less by that self-made hope of cure. Pluto sustained no less his vital forces with their weight. So Juno suffered more, when with a 3-forked arrow's head Amphitryo's son did gore her right breast past all hope of cure. Pluto sustained no less Pluto sustained no less by that self-same shoulder at hell, past all hope of cure. Sustained no Pluto sustained no less, Pluto sustained no less, Pluto sustained no Pluto sustained no less by that self-man, and by a shaft of equal bitterness, shot through his shoulder at hell gates, and there amongst the dead, through his shoulder at hell gates, and there amongst the dead, there hell gates, and there amongst the dead, and there amongst the dead, and there amongst the dead, were he not deathless, he had died. But up to heaven he fled, extremely tortured for a cure, which instantly he won at Paeon's hand with sovereign balm. And this did Jove's great son, unblessed, great high deed daring man, that cared not doing ill, unblessed, and this did Jove's sovereign balm. By Minerva's will and balm. And this did Jove's with sovereign balm. And this did Jove's great son, unblessed, great high deed daring man, that cared not doing ill, that with his bow durst wound the gods. But by Minerva's will, thy wound the foolish Diomed was so profane to give, not knowing. By Minerva's will, thy wound the foolish, by Minerva's will, by Minerva's will, thy wound the foolish Diomed was so profane to give, not knowing he that fights with heaven never, that fights with heaven has with heaven, he that fights with heaven hath never long to live, and for this deed he shall never have child, and for this deed he shall never have never long to live, and for this deed he shall never have child about his knee, to call him father coming home. Besides, hear this from me, strength-trusting man, though thou be strong, and art in strength a tower, take heed a stronger meet thee not, and that a woman's power meet thee not, and that a woman's power contains not that superior strength, lest that woman be Adrastus' daughter, and thy wife the wise Aegiale, superior strength, and lest that woman be your strength. And lest that not that superior strength, and lest that woman be Adrastus' daughter, and thy wife the wise Aegiale, when from this hour not far she wakes, even sighing with desire, to kindle our revenge on thee with her enamoring fire, in choosing some fresh young friend, and so drown all thy fame. And so drown all thy fame, one here thy so drown all thy fame, won here in war, in her court piece, this said with her court piece, in her court war, in her court piece, and in an opener shame. This said, with both her hands she cleansed the tender back and palm of all the sacred blood they lost, and, never using balm, the pain ceased, and the wound was cured to this. The pain ceased, Juno and the pain ceased. Using balm, the pain ceased, and the wound was cured of this kind queen of love. Juno and Pallas, seeing this, essayed to anger Jove, and quit his late-made mirth with them, with some sharp jest, and quit his late-made mirth with them about the loving dame, with some sharp jest, in like sort built upon her present shame. Grey-eyed Athenia began, and asked the Thunderer, if nothing moving him to wrath, she boldly might prefer what she conceived to his conceit, and staying no reply, she bade him view the Cyprian fruit that he loved so tenderly, whom she, though hurt, and by this means intending to suborn some other lady of the Greeks, whom lovely veils adorn, to gratify some other friend of her much-loved Troy, as she embraced and stirred her blood to the Grey-eyed Athenia began, and asked the Thunderer to suborn some other lady of the Greeks, whom lovely veils adorn, to gratify some other friend of her much-loved Troy, as she embraced and stirred her blood to the Venerean joy, as she embraced and stirred her blood to the Venerean of her much-loved Troy. As she embraced and stirred her blood to the Venerean joy, the golden clasped those Grecian dames upon their girdles wear, took hold of her delicious hand, and hurt it, she had fear. The Thunderer smiled, and called to him love's golden arbitress, and told her those rough works of war were not for her excess. She should be making marriages, embracings, kisses, charms. Stern Mars and Pallas had the charms of those affairs in arms. While these affairs in arms. Pallas had the charms of those affairs in arms. Charms of those affairs in arms. Those affairs in arms. Those affairs in arms. Those affairs in arms. Affairs in arms. While these thus talked, Tydides' rage still thirsted to achieve his prize upon Anchises' son, though well he did perceive the son himself, but his desire, though well he did perceive the son himself protected him, but his desires in self protected him. But his desires, inflamed with that great Trojan prince's blood, and arms so highly famed, not that great god did reverence. Thrice rushed he rudely on, and thrice betwixt his darts and death the sun's bright target shone. But when upon the fourth assault, much like a spirit he flew, the far-off working deity exceeding wrathful grew, and asked him, What? Not yield to gods? Thy equals learn to know the race of gods is far above men creeping here below. This drave him to some small retreat. He would not tempt far above men creeping here below. This drave him to some small retreat. He would not tempt more near the wrath of him that struck so. More near the wrath of him that. He would not tempt more near the. Tempt more near the wrath of him that. More near the wrath of him that struck so far, whose power had now set clear Aeneas from the stormy field within the holy place of Pergamus, where to the hope of his so sovereign grace a goodly temple was advanced, in whose large inmost part he left him, and to his supply left him, and to his he left him, and to his supply part he left him, and to his supply inclined his mother's heart, Latona, and the dart-pleased queen, who cured and made him strong, queen, who cured and made him strong. The silver-bowed fair god thence threw in the tumultuous throng an image, cured and made him strong. The silver-bowed fair god thence threw in the tumultuous throng an image that in stature, an image that in song, an image, an image that in stature, look, and arms he did create, like Venus' son, for which the Greeks and Trojans made debate, laid loud strokes on their ox-hide shields and bucklers easily borne, which errors Phoebus pleased to urge on Mars himself in Greeks and Trojans made debate, easily borne, which the Greeks and Trojans made debate, laid loud strokes on their ox-hide shields, and Trojans made debate, laid loud strokes on their ox-hide shields, thence threw in the tumultuous throng an image that in stature, look, and arms he did create, like Venus' son, for which the Greeks and Trojans made debate, laid loud strokes on their ox-hide shields and bucklers easily borne, which error Phoebus pleased to urge on Mars himself in scorn. Mars, Mars, said he, thou plague of men, smeared with the dust and blood of humans and their ruined walls, yet thinks thy godhead good to frighten this fury from the field, who next will fight with Jove? To urge on Mars him scorn. Mars, Mars, said he, thou plague of men, smeared with the dust and blood of humans and their ruined walls, yet thinks thy godhead good to frighten this fury from the field, who next will fight with Jove? First, in a bold approach, he hurt the moist palm of thy love, and next, if he did affect to have a deity's power, he held out his assault on me. Said the lofty assault on me. This said, the lofty tower of Pergamus he made his seat, and Mars now did excite the Trojan forces, in the form of him that led to fight. Trojan forces, in the now did excite the Trojan forces, in the form of him that led to fight the Thracian troops, swift Acamas. Fight the Thracian troops, swift Acamas. O Priams, O Priams, swift Acamas. O Priam's sons, said he, how long the slaughter of your men can ye sustain to see? Even till they brave you at your gates, you suffer beaten down Aeneas, great Anchises' son, whose prowess we renown. Anchises' son, whose prowess we renown as much as Hector's. Fetch him off from this contentious. With this, the strength as much as Hector. With this, the strength as Hector's. Fetch him off from this contentious prease. With this, strengthen spirits of all his courage. Off from this contentious prease. With this, the strength and spirits of all his courage did increase. And yet Sir Pedance, where is thy unthankful? Where is thy unthankful var? Where is thy and hardy Greeks? Where is thy unthankful? That was fun when with this particular prease. With this, the strength and spirits of all his courage did increase. And yet Sir Pedance seconds him with this particular taunt of noble Hector. The taunt of noble Hector. Particular taunt. With this particular taunt of noble with this particular taunt of noble Hector. Hector, where is thy unthankful? Hector, where is thy unthankful? Of noble Hector. I kind of like this, even though it has a slight accent to it. Hector. Hector, where is thy unthankful vaunt? And that huge strength on which it built, that thou and thy on which it built, that Hector, where is thy unthankful vaunt? Taunt of noble Hector. Hector, where is thy unthankful vaunt? And that huge strength on which it built, that thou and it built. Strength on which it built, that thou and thy allies, with all thy brothers, without thy brothers, with all thy brothers, without aid of us or our supplies, and troubling not a citizen, the city safe would hold. In all which friends and brothers' helps I see not, nor am told of any one of their exploits, but all held in dismay of Diomed, like a sort of dogs that at a lion bay, and entertain no spirit to pinch. We, your fight for the town as you help. We, your assistants here, fight for the town as you helped us. Fight for the town, fight for. We, your assistants here, fight for the town. Assistants here, fight for the town as we, your assistants here, fight for the town as you helped us, and I, an aiding peer, and I, an aiding us, and I, you helped us, and I, an aiding peer, no citizen, even out of care that doth become a man, for men and children's liberties, aid all the aid, liberties, for men and children's liberties. Men and children's liberties, add all the aid I can, not out of my particular. Add all the aid I can, not out of my particular cause, for hence my profit grows far. My profit grows. My profit grows for. Profit grows for far hence Asian Lissa, for far hence Asian. My profit grows for far hence Asian Lycia lies, where gulfy Xanthus flows, and where my loved wife, and where my loved and where my loved and where my loved wife, infant son, and treasure nothing, Xanthus flows, and this flows, Xanthus flows. eyes, where gulfy Xanthus flows, and where my loved wife, infant son, and treasure nothing scant I left behind me, which I see those men would have that behind me, which I see those men would have. See those men would have. See those men would have that want. I see those men would have that want, and therefore they that have would keep. Yet I, as I would lose their sure fruition, cheer my troops, and with their lives propose mine own life, and with their lives propose mine own life, both to general fight and to particular cope with this great soldier. Though I say I entertain no hope to have such greetings as the Greeks, for fear to lose like Troy. Yet thou, even Hector, deedless standst, and carest not to employ the town-born carest not to employ thy town, deedless and heedless standst, and carest not to employ thy town-born friends, to bid them stand to fight and save their wives. Town-born friends, to bid them stand. Born friends, to bid them stand to fight and save their wives, lest as a fowler cast his net upon the silly lives of birds of all sorts, so the foe of your walls and houses hails, one with another on all heads, or escape on all heads, so on all heads, on all heads, or such as scape their falls, be made the prey and prize of them, as willing overthrown, that hope not for you with their force, that hope not for you with their that hope not for you, that hope throne, that hope not for you with their force. And so this brave-built town will prove a chaos that deserves in thee so hot a care, and should consume that deserves in thee so hot a care, and should consume chaos that deserves in thee so hot a care, and should consume thy days and nights, to hearten and prepare the assistant princes, pray their minds to bear their far-brought toils, to give them worth with worthy fight, in victories and foils, still to be equal, and thyself, exempling them in all, need no reproofs nor spurs. All this in thy free choice should fall. This free choice should fall. This stung great Hector's heart, and yet, as every worthy counsels, Hector's heart, and yet, as every generous mind should silent bear a just reproof, and show what good they find in worthy counsels, by their ends put into worthy counsels, by their ends put into present deeds, and show what good they find in worthy, and show what good they find. A just reproof, and show what good bear a just reproof, and show what good they find in worthy counsels, by their ends put into present deeds, not stomach nor be vainly shamed. So Hector's spirit proceeds, so Hector's spirit Hector's spirit proceeds, and from his chariot, wholly armed, he jumped upon the... And from his chariot, wholly armed, he jumped... From his chariot, wholly armed, he jumped upon the sand. On foot, so toiling through the host, a dart in either hand, and all hands turned against the Greeks. The Greeks despised their worst, and thickening their instructed powers, expected all they durst. And thickening their worst, and thickening durst. And thickened powers expected all they expected. And thickening their instructed powers, and thickening their instructed powers, despised their worst, and thickening their instructed powers, expected all they, and thickening their instructed powers, then with the feet of, and thickening their instructed powers, expected all they durst. Then with the feet of horse and foot, and as in sacred feet of horse and foot, the dust in clouds did rise, and as in sacred floors of barns upon and as in sacred floors of barns, upon corn winnowers flies the chaff, driven with opposite wind, when yellow Ceres dights, which all the Ceres dights, when yellow Ceres dights, which all the diters' feet, which all the diters' dights, which all the diters' feet, legs, arms, their heads and shoulders whites. So looked the Grecians grey with dust that struck the solid heaven, raised from returning chariots and troops together driven. Each side stood to their labors firm. Fierce Mars flew through the air and gathered darkness from the fight, and with his best affair obeyed the pleasure of the sun that wears the golden sword, who bade him raise the spirits of Troy when Pallas ceased to afford her helping office to the Greeks. And then his own hands wrought, which from his fane's rich chancel, which from his hands wrought, which from his fane's rich chancel cured, the true Aeneas brought, and placed him by his peers and brought, and placed him by his peers, placed him by his peers and field, true Aeneas brought. Placed him by his peers in field, who did with joy admire to see him both alive and safe, and all his powers entire. Yet stood not sifting how it chanced another sort of task, then stirring the idle sieve of news, did all their forces ask. Inflamed by Phoebus, harmful Mars, and Eris, eager affairs, and Eris, and Eris eager afar. The Greeks had none to hearten them. Their hearts rose with the war. But chiefly Diomed, Ithacus, and both the Ajaces used stirring examples and good words. Their own fames had infused spirit enough into their bloods, to make enough into their bloods, to make them neither fear the Trojans' force nor fate itself, but still expecting were, when most was done, what would be more. Their ground they still made good, and in their silence and set more. Their ground they still made good, and in their silence and set powers, like fair still clouds they stood, with which Jove like fair still clouds they stood. Still clouds they stood, with which Jove crowns the top of hills, with which Jove crowns the tops of hills in any quiet day, when Boreas in any quiet day, when Boreas and the ruder winds that used to drive away air's dusky vapors, being loose in many a whistling gale, are pleasingly bound up and calm, and not a breath exhale. So firmly stood the Greeks, nor fled for all the Ilians' aid. Atrides yet coasts through the troops, Atrides, O friends, aid. Atrides yet coasts through the troops, confirming men so staid. O friends, said he, hold up your minds. Strength is but strength of will. Reverence each other's will. Reverence each other's good in fight, and shame at strength of will. Reverence strength of will. Reverence each other's good in fight, and shame in fight, and each other's good in fight, and shame at things done ill. Where soldiers show an honest shame, and love of honor lies that ranks men with the first in fight, death fewer liveries gives than life. Death fewer liveries gives. Death fewer Death fewer liveries gives than in fight. Death fewer liveries gives than life, or than where fame's neglect makes cowards fight at length. Flight makes cowards never. Flight neither makes cowards fight at length. Neglect makes cowards fight at length. Flight at length. Flight neither both the body grace, nor shows the mind hath strength. He said, and swiftly shows the mind hath strength, nor shows the mind hath strength. Body grace, nor shows the mind hath strength. He said, and swiftly through the troops a mortal lance did send, that reft a standard-bearer's life, renowned Aeneas' friend. A standard-bearer's life, renowned Aeneas' friend. Bearer's life, renowned a standard-bearer's life, renowned Aeneas' friend, Diacoon Pergacides, whom all the Trojans loved, as he were one of Priam's sons. His mind was so approved in always fighting with the first. The lance his target took, which could not interrupt the blow, but threw it clear The lance his target took. The lance always fighting with the first. The lance his target took, which could not interrupt the blow which could not interrupt his target took, which could not interrupt the blow that through it clearly struck. Interrupt the blow that through it. The blow that through it clearly struck, and in his belly's rim was sheathed, beneath his girdle stead. He sounded the girdle stead. Beneath his girdle stead. He sounded falling, and his arms with him resounded, dead. Then fell 2 princes of the Greeks by great Aeneas' ire, Diocleus' sons, Orsilochus and Creon, resounded, dead. Then fell 2 Orsilochus and Creon, whose kinds, Orsilochus and Creon, Diocleus' sons, Orsilochus and Orsilochus and Creon, whose kind sire in bravely builded Pheera dwelt. Rich and of sacred blood. He was descended lineally from great Alpheus' flood that broadly flows through Pylos fields. Alpheus did beget Orsilochus, who in the rule of many men was set. And that Orsilochus begat the rich Diocleus, and that Orsilochus many men was set, and that Orsilochus begat the rich Diocleus. Diocleus, sire to Creon, was Orsilochus, begat the rich Diocleus, sire to Orsilochus, begat the rich Diocleus. Diocleus, sire to Creon was, and this Orsilochus. Both these arrived at man's estate, and with both the Atreides went at man's estate. With both the Atreides went. Man's estate, with both the Atreides went to honor them in the Iliad war, for with both the Atreides went to honor them in the Iliad wars, and both were one way sent to death as well as Troy, for death as well as Troy, death as well as Troy, as well as Troy. For death hid both in one black hour, as 2 young lions, with their dams sustained but to devour, bred on the tops of some steep hill, and in the gloomy of some steep hill, and in the gloomy deep of an in the gloomy deep of an inaccessible wood, rush out and prey on sheep, steers, oxen, and destroy men's stalls, so long, so and destroy men's stalls, so long that they come short, and by the owner's steel are slain. In such unhappy sort, men's stalls, so long that they come short, and by the owner's steel are slain. In such unhappy sort fell when Menelaus viewed. In such unhappy sort. In such unhappy sort. The owner's slain. In such unhappy sort fell these beneath Aeneas' power. When Menelaus viewed, like two tall fir trees these two fall, their timeless falls he rued, and to the first fight where he rued, and to the first fight where they lay, a vengeful force he took. His arms beat back the sun in flames. His arms beat back. Vengeful force he took. His arms beat back the sun in flames. A dreadful lance he shook. Mars put the fury in his mind that by Aeneas' hands, who was by Aeneas' hands, who was to make the slaughter good, he might have strewed the sands. Antilochus, old Nestor's son, observing he was bent to urge a combat of he might have strewed the sands. Antilochus, old Nestor's son, observing he was bent to urge a combat of such odds, and knowing the event being ill on his part, all their pains alone sustained for him, erred from their end, made combat of such odds, and knowing he was bent to urge a combat of such urge a combat of such odds, and knowing the event being ill on his part, all their pains alone sustained for him, erred from their end, made after hard, and took them in the trim of an encounter, both, and took them after hard, and took them in the trim of an encounter. Both their hands and darts advanced and shook, and both pitched in full stand of charge, when suddenly the look of Anchises took note of Nestor's valiant son, in full charge too, which 2-1 made Venus' issue shun the hottest, which 2-1 made Venus issue